thank you so much for being here. What a great space, huh? Yeah. So I want to thank everyone for being here, members and guests. It means a lot to me that you took time out of your day to come and hear the wisdom of our panelists. That's what this is all about, right? Building community. So how many people here are guests, non-members? So look at that, we got a handful of people, right? So those of you that are sitting with them, spread the good word. I'd love to talk about Coalition9, but I hate doing it because you guys hear me talk about it all the time. So I shook down my buddy Jordan to talk a little bit about what Coalition9 means to you and why you're here.
Yeah, I guess I can just stand up and also.
And say who you are and what you do.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Jordan Porteous. I own an insurance agency called Goosehead Insurance. Mainly we focus with folks that are, going through real estate transactions, things like that. As far as my connection to Coalition9 and Darin, the minute I found out about Coalition9, I knew I wanted to be a part of it. My kind of whole why behind it and why I participated, why I was on board so early, and why it's been so great for me is just having kind of like a board of advisors that I know understand the types of situations that I'm in as a business owner. And as I've been building our agency, to have folks that are in my group that I can go to and say, hey, here are the things that I'm dealing with. What do you think about this that maybe aren't as close to it as I am? How you look at the picture on the wall and you're right next to it, you try to see if it's straight. Sometimes it helps to ask someone who's across the room who's not as close as you. And so that's been a big help to me, and I really appreciate that, just being surrounded by good people. And,
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Way better than me saying it. So I also want to thank our sponsors. So our sponsors are there. They're also on the cards on your table. So I want to thank Insperity. I want to thank All-in-One Accounting. I want to thank Rev Advisory Group, Irish Titan, and Skywater Search Partners. Those are the sponsors that help make events like this happen. And then also on top of things, thank Luke Tech, right? So Luke Boehm, you don't know Luke. Luke is a member and was so gracious in saying, yeah, we want to get on board from a location sponsor standpoint. And so as being a location sponsor, I also want to make sure that they have a little opportunity to talk about the organization. And then also, to me, it was really important to do an event like this at a company like Luke Tech that is dealing with the challenges in talent, because I don't think anybody's dealing with the war for talent more than anybody that works with labor, right? That is incredibly difficult. So I wanted to make sure that they welcomed us into their home. So Natasha is here, and she's going to talk a little bit about Luke Tech.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Natasha. I am a People and Culture Manager here at Luke Tech, so I've been in charge of kind of battling through the war for talent. And Luke asked me to come and talk today briefly about Luke Tech. He might know it better than me as a salesperson, but I'm going to do my best. Some of you, it sounds like, got to go on a tour, so you've seen what we do a little bit. Oil manufacturing and distribution maybe is the simple way to say that. However, we think of ourselves as an energy-saving company, right? The fluids that we produce they are a way to reduce friction. And when you're an oil company, that's not something that you can easily sell to digitals, people coming into the workforce, right? Oil is not sexy, oil is not great, oil has a connotation to bad things, right? So we have tried to rebrand ourselves, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what we've done over the past couple of years in the war for talent and how that's changed our business. So some of the things we've done here is to target our market is we're looking for production, technicians, and drivers. Drivers are in a national shortage. Drivers are very difficult to find, but drivers are also a lot of times driving over the road. They're not home at night. And so what we've done is we've tried to change our job postings to sell to our teammates, really what is it that they get out of being a driver for Luke Tech versus just being a driver. Because being a driver at Luke Tech, you're not a driver, you're actually a customer delivery representative. And you get the opportunity to be home every night. You get the opportunity to be home every weekend. that's one of our examples. Other things we've done for technicians and direct labor is, kind of the general things, right? We are introducing sign-on bonuses. We are leaning on our referrals. LubeTech is a family company, and we have always relied on referrals. So we've got creative with how we get referrals in the past couple of years. We went through, last July, we had a significant time period where our time to fill metrics were going from what we're used to as 35 days up to 60 or 70. So nobody's applying, no one's working. That direct labor, you're making $15 to $18 that you can sit at home and make that on unemployment and be making more than you could make to work. So it was really hard to entice people to come in. So we did a 330 initiative where we went around and handed everybody $5 in the company on the floor and said, give me names, give me their numbers. We'll hand you $5 for every name you give me, and we're just gonna call them. That was a way to kind of open our scope, and it was very creative. Was it successful? I think we got 5 hires out of it. So for the spend that we did, it was a good opportunity and something that we tried. We also thought differently in our investments. So in the past, we were posting and praying, and we had to get a little bit more strategic. So we partnered with a vendor called Appcast, and Appcast goes out and it actually pushes our jobs to different boards, and we have a quality integration piece where we can see like how many clicks are turning into applications and what boards are they coming from, and we can strategically put our funds in different places. So that was a great opportunity for us to get our jobs in front of other people. We also hosted a lot of in-person hiring events, doing blitzes, but we also hosted like job fairs here where we advertised, we called, and then we once again leaned on our referrals. Send somebody to, any employee that sends someone, we're going to give them gift cards to our gear shop, free gear. We give lunch to people that come in, come meet your referral, have lunch with us, and then we can interview them for different roles. And then the last thing that we have done is we've partnered up with a company called Trades Hub for technicians, so like really geared at our technical labor. We're in an interesting spot here where we want to hire skilled labor, except for they, maybe if they're an HVAC technician, they can go do that job, so why would they want to come install car washes for us? So what we've done is we work with Trades Hub, and Trades Hub is a new organization in Minnesota that is partnering with local high schools to bridge the gap from high school to technical school, and they're targeting those people who maybe don't want to go to college, and then they can go through this program online. It's gamified, kind of targeting that younger audience for them to learn what it would take to get into these different roles. And then we have the opportunity to sponsor people for scholarships, bring them on for internships and other ways to interact with those high school students. So it's a really good opportunity for us there as well. So that's kind of exhausted all of our, after we exhausted all of our low-hanging fruit, those are some of the additional things that we've done to kind of go for talent. We have also recently started piloting having people come, if they come in for an interview for our kit line, the lower paid, low skilled roles, we're actually giving them gift cards just to show up, because we're targeting, or we are competing with people like McDonald's in those spaces where they're doing the same thing, giving them gift cards, giving them Uber vouchers, giving them free meals just to show up and be in person. So we're trying to do that a little bit differently in our direct labor venues as well.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Natasha. All right, and then I also want to thank our Coalition9 team. So Brenda and Emily. So Emily checked you in. Brenda is our marketing specialist. So I actually would like a round of applause for them, because all right, let's get started. The way this is going to go, I'm going to introduce the panelists. Heide is the MC. She's like your ship captain from here on out. And we're going to take that to about 12:20 or so. And then I have some fancy note cards here that I'm going to pass out to each table that are discussion conversation starters. And I want you guys to have a little discussion around your table on some of these questions and how you're approaching some of these things, and then we're going to reconvene at the end. And someone from each table is going to share some ahas or some new things that you've learned in the conversations. So let's get started. Let's get started with Laura King from Skywater Search Partners. Laura, come on up.
Oh, I didn't know you were doing
Yeah. Laura is also one of our facilitators. We've been friends for many years, and she's one of my favorite people. Yeah, that's how we're doing this. Yeah.
Which one do I fit at?
At that far one.
Okay.
Yep. Robb, Breding, come on up. Robb is also one of our facilitators.
Good to see you, man.
Being here.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Thanks, Laura.
Courtney Howard. Thank you for being here so much.
I have notes.
I love it.
No.
All right. And then, sorry, man, last, Darin Lynch from Irish Night.
Good boy, good boy.
All right. And your MC for the day, and we'll take you from here on out, my good friend Heide Olson.
Thank you.
Darin, what a great event. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for pulling this together. I don't know about all of you, but talent is pretty much what I spent the majority of my time thinking and talking about these days. And this severe labor shortage that we're all dealing with is maybe kept all of us wondering, where have all the people gone? Where have they all gone? We have this global pandemic that we're dealing with that has really challenged people to where they work, when they work, how they work. COVID fears, retirement of baby boomers, early retirement, and also unemployment being very available. People get money from unemployment. So today we're going to talk with these very skilled experts that have a lot to information to give us on these topics. So let's get started with Laura King today. Oh, all right. What are some specific strategies that we can initiate immediately in our organizations that can make a positive impact on our talent acquisition process?
All right, I'm going to get real tactical, like real quick. Your job descriptions. Okay, who has read a job description where you basically want to just like snooze after the first sentence? Like you completely lose your audience? All I have to say about job descriptions is it's not about you, it's what's in it for them. Yes, you'd like to have them bring some things to the table, but maybe go knock on your marketing department or someone who's a little bit more creative and ask them to take a look at this job description. Maybe go talk to the person who's hiring, and you might want to think about just completely revamping it. I think if I have to show an example, All-in-One Accounting, if you want to take a look at All-in-One Accounting's job descriptions, they really follow a nice format about like the who, the what, the what's in it for me, what you'll get. So it's much more focused on the talent. We used to live in a world where you could put something out and you'd get hundreds of applicants. Gone are those days, right? So that's a really easy piece. Another idea is raise a hand who currently gives out referral bonuses. Throw out some numbers. What's your referral bonus?
500. 1,000.
1,000?
Cash.
1,000 cash. Okay, if you're not incenting your own employees to be your recruiters, that is where you should start. Your employees know good people. And if you're not going to incent their behavior, they're probably not going to spend some extra time talking and reeling them in on your behalf.
And making it easy for them. So one of the things that we did was just give us a name. Just a name. We'll track them down. You don't have to introduce. You don't have to get involved.
That's a really good point because
yeah.
Not all employees feel comfortable reaching out, right? But you could also go one step further and even just give them the messaging to at least start the conversation. Right? Hi, we're actually looking for blah, 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 blah. Thought of you. Would you be open to an exploratory dialogue with so-and-so inside my company? Like, give them, make it a no-brainer for them to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, make it easy. I think that's really important, and I think the culture too that you have created, where are your employees engaged in solving this problem with you? I mean, that's an important piece as well. I think think back, I mean, I have to go back a long ways working at Sears back in the early 90s. I love that company. And I would love to, all they needed to do was ask. And so letting people know what your needs and wants are, I think inside of your culture is a really good idea. Obviously a lot of real tactical things you can do in terms of bonuses, but it also give you a feel for how engaged your employees are.
And then my final recommendation, I think, please jump in here, is create a video and put it on YouTube or like put it somewhere so that they can hear directly from the person who's hiring. So, I mean, you can read a job description or you could watch a 2-minute video, right? And maybe during that 2-minute video, you get a better glimpse into the culture, into the day-to-day, and you can maybe just capture their attention a little bit better. And so, I mean, we were using video like 10 years ago. So if you're not using video, I would highly recommend it. You could even, if you're still in an in-person environment, like do a little tour, right, and show like the culture, but make it fun, make it entertaining.
I was just going to say, I think that Laura hit on a good theme because I think we think of hiring as HR, and really we should think of it as PR, right? Because especially in a competitive market, but even prior to this great resignation, I think that when we think of it that way, then you do write your job descriptions a little bit differently. You do things like creating a video. You do things like making sure your brand is out there on Facebook and or LinkedIn, depending on how you use those different channels. But if you think about it as PR, not HR, I think you shift your mentality a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like thinking about our team members as our customers now. The videos are great. We also use videos as part of our recruiting strategy as we're interacting with our prospective team members, and that's been big, using sales reach.
Yes.
So, all right, Rob, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. What strategies are successful companies using to maintain and build a vibrant workforce?
All right, yeah, so and this one here, I have 2 clients that come to mind when you say who is being successful. And one's a company that has a lot of those frontline labor workers. It's a commercial cleaning company, so they're looking for cleaners. And I think of this person as being very successful. And the other one is a professional services company where they have lots of people with college degrees that they're looking to acquire. And both of these companies are thriving, really, I think, pretty well in this environment. Example, the commercial cleaning business got a new client that required 50 people to come on board to do a 6-month project to do a fire restoration. And she was able to put those 50 people together in 2 weeks. And how does she do that? And so the strategy on that side is her people are engaged in that process, and that's what, kind of dovetailing off what we were just talking about there. She simply just calls her leaders and says, hey, we need some people. And pretty soon, she's got them round up. And I don't know how she has empowered them, probably using some of these things we've talked about, making it simple, Laura, right, for them to do so. And then on the professional services side, I had some stats I was going to read here, but they've actually, the reason that they're doing so well is because they didn't just start thinking about employee engagement. I mean, we're talking about attracting and retaining people here in the talent war, but the big piece of that in the companies that are winning right now are those that actually have a culture that people want to work inside of, okay?
Ding,
right?
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, exactly. And so if that's you, so you've got a great culture, I mean, you got to leverage that. You got to, get your employees to start to share that, and HR to start to, like you said, advertise those things. And so I think that, I think my other question gets into a little bit about the how of creating that culture, which isn't happen overnight, right? But, it starts by recognizing, where am I? Do people really want to work here? And what makes them, what makes for a good employee for me, for my company, who fits well? And so those are some of the things that both in the professional services company and in the labor company that they've thought through, and it makes their job a lot easier. So, yeah. Yeah, I have 7 bullet points I could give you in terms of those, in terms of those things that that I see inside of there. And you know what, I'll just mention them quick. The leadership team or leader, okay, so the owner or the leader, they're committed to excellence and growth so that they're, at the top of it. Leaders have a big impact on culture. The second thing is they've thought about their mission, vision, values, and what they are, and they're living them out. So when they run an ad, to your point, it's not a lie. It's the truth. Okay, it is good. This is a good place to work, or I shouldn't say it's a lie. That's being coarse, but it's real. It's a real thing. The Gallup poll. There's a Gallup poll recently that was done for 2021 in terms of this topic of engagement, and they asked 3 questions. And the first question was in regard to clarity of expectations, believe it or not. That's what made for an engaged workforce. They knew what you expected of them. The second thing was talent development, or, I'm going to grow, I'm going to learn something here. And then the third thing was that they had a say. They felt like they had a say in what was happening inside of the company. And so those are all 3 things that these companies are doing, I think. So I think that's, There's 4 more bullet points, but I'll go ahead.
There's also this concept of re-recruiting, right? That I've heard recently, like focusing on keeping our people and actually working, intentionally about making sure they're staying. So engaging and re-recruiting our existing team and really focusing on that retention based on culture, based on how we're engaging with them, having those conversations.
Yeah, well, and I didn't give the percent, maybe you're interested. It was 36% of the workforce said they answered those 3 questions in the affirmative, and they felt really engaged. 15% hate their work, okay? I mean, literally hated it. So that's literally half the workforce accounted for there. That leaves 50% kind of floating around out there. So there is still an opportunity. The problem is these people are working, and they might not be looking for work. And so your point about let's get some conversations going is very necessary. So there you go.
All right, Courtney.
Yeah.
What trends are you seeing outside of the typical offerings that organizations are putting in place to set themselves apart?
Yeah, absolutely. It's time to get creative because it's a war, right? We're going to war, Darin. How are we getting creative? So there's big things.
I'm watching Vikings right now.
I don't know what that is.
The Vikings TV show.
Okay.
They're in war all the time.
Great. So there's big things we can do and there's small things we can do. Of course, all depending on your budget and what you're able to do as a company. But when you're sending out an offer letter, the first thing they're going to look at, right, is the salary, what salary you're proposing, and number 2 is going to be the benefits. So what benefit package are you offering? And oftentimes, they really can't negotiate on the benefits because that's set for the group, but they can negotiate on the salary. But what you can do is have some additional things that differentiate your company. So small things that you can do, you can say, hey, it's really important to us to have physical health. So all we provide a Peloton app. We pay for it for all of our employees, just as an example. And that could really excite someone, like, oh my God, I love my Peloton, you're gonna pay for my subscription. It could be, I do a lot of benefit enrollment meetings and we have pet insurance, and you would not believe how excited people get about pet insurance. Like, it's a really small thing, but people love their pets, and it's just like a way for them to get excited about this company. Volunteering, right? Having a cause, really important to people, especially the younger generation. So as a company, part of your culture is it's really important to us to give back. We give you 10 hours a month or whatever it is to go volunteer for a cause that's important to you. And to us, our organization, we align with this mission. So as a group, we go and volunteer. My husband's here. I know he does a ton of volunteering with his company. So, but he gets super, super excited and super, super engaged when they have those type of events. And then the trickle down on that is that you have team building and communication that's outside of work. Some of the bigger things that you can do, I have a manufacturing client that was having, this is pre-COVID, but they were having a really hard time just with people showing up, right? Like, people were just leaving the job without any notice. And they were a fulfillment center. So they started doing a profit sharing program that was quarterly based. So the more production they could get, the more they could get out the door, higher profits. And so they were giving those profits back a percentage to those employees. So they had skin in the game, which is really nice. Sabbaticals, we're hearing a lot about this. That's a great retention strategy if you can do it, right? If you were with this company for 5 years, we're gonna give you 12 weeks paid to go do what you wanna do. And you don't have to check into work. You can't check into work. 12 weeks, get out of here, right? So if someone's been working there for 4 years and they're getting wooed to go work for someone else, they're like, oh, I'm really close to this sabbatical. I'm gonna stay because that's really important, right? So thinking strategically, not just short-term, but long-term.
And this wasn't planted, but we just rolled out sabbaticals this year. Effective last year, because we had some of our Titans. I own a company called Irish Titan. We call our employees Titans. And we had 3 hit their 5-year mark last year, and we rolled out sabbaticals, which worked really well for them. Of course, they loved it. But the Titans who hadn't yet achieved it, it definitely resonated with them. So that's been really powerful for us.
How many weeks do you do?
We do 1 month.
1 month.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. 1 month, we changed their password so they can't get in to email or Slack. So it was really well received. 2 of the 3 were itchy to come back, right? Because that was long enough for them to recharge. The 3rd, he was ready to stay out a little bit longer. He's a big golfer, and he took July, I think it was, and he was ready to keep golfing into August. Yeah, so we did that. We also, just speaking about benefits, we really amped up our maternity and paternity leave effective this year. So now our maternity leave, they get 4 weeks of full pay, and then for the 8 weeks thereafter, if I remember these details, I'm more of an idea guy, I don't bother with details. That's how I get out of trouble sometimes. The 4 weeks at full pay, and then 8 weeks at 40, we adjust their salary down to $40,000. And when that is combined to the short-term disability that the maternal parent can get, then it's basically full pay. For paternity, we do 4 weeks of full pay with 2 weeks consecutive, and then they take a week at a time each of the following months so that they can kind of ease back in, and it's kind of easier for the entire family unit. So both of those have been really well received.
Super creative.
I'm just curious about how you came up with those ideas. Did you engage the team on that?
No, I do engage the team on a lot of that stuff. I think that those specific ideas came from conversations like this, reading things, maybe a pint of whiskey, or not a pint of whiskey. And then I come in, hey guys, I have an idea, right? But lots of times they bring ideas to me too.
Yeah.
Those specific ones were things I came.
You got to be careful when you ask that question. How long should the sabbatical be, right?
Correct. That one was mine.
I think we should touch on salary. So with inflation, and companies doing the typical 2 to 3%, that's not actually going to cut it. And so for very key talent, we're seeing upwards of 15 to 20% increases to keep, and or some other creative ways to just keep those top performers. Whether it be a salary, whether it be additional opportunities for bonus, equity. You identify those people that you really want long term, and I just even if it's your emerging leaders. Again, I really caution you that 2 to 3%. They're likely getting pings from people like me, from recruiters, who are enticing them with much larger salaries. So to fend those off.
Absolutely. So to that point, Laura, this year, because we were hiring people in at such a higher rate than our existing team, we went out and proactively gave spot bonuses and increases to level set for our legacy team members. And we know that we have to give big increases this year.
To challenge that a little bit, though, people want to be fairly paid. There's no doubt about that, right? And when salaries are increasing, we have to account for that. So we raised pay bands across the board. Most of our team, by number, are programmers, so kind of skewed towards the higher end. But there's a book called Drive by Daniel Pink that a lot of people might know. And there's a great whiteboard video that talks about what people really want is mastery, autonomy, and purpose. That's what people want when they go to work. And so lots of times when someone leaves a company and they claim that it's money, frequently it's not. they're using that as either a conscious or subconscious excuse because they're not feeling mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Again, people have to be fairly paid. That's not an excuse to not pay people fairly. But some of our developers, so one of the technologies we use is a technology called Magento, which nobody cares about, but just to put some tangibility to this, some of our developers are getting offered twice the salary that we're paying them, which is already 6 figures, to go be a Magento developer, continuing to work remotely, because we're not fully back in the office, we're kind of a hybrid deal, and they're not taking it because they don't want to work on Magento, right? So it's not always just about the compensation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, mastery, autonomy, purpose. I 100% agree. I was speaking more towards like if they're not being paid,
Oh, yeah,
their
for
market
sure,
value.
for
It's
sure.
like you gotta hit that one.
Well, and the reality is that's changing, right? Faster than it has in the past. So you just kind of have to keep an eye on it, right? Like what does that person warrant right now?
Right.
So Darin, speaking of culture, I kind of think of you as like the king of culture, right? So my question for you is, how and when did you define your culture?
So I think, first of all, culture is a tricky word, right? Like it's kind of like defining electricity or something. And so I think we probably might want to start with what it really means. And it can mean a couple of different things. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, so I like speaking kind of plainly. And it's one of the definitions I like is culture means people like us do things like this around here. Simon Sinek, who I'm a giant fan of, says that it's values plus behavior. So starting from there, our culture is defined as our golden circle. I am a big Simon Sinek fan. Our golden circle, quick little detour, our why is business first, online second. Our how is partnerships, not transactions. And our what is building and growing e-commerce channels, for anybody that knows the golden circle thing. So our culture is our golden circle plus POTUS, which is not a political reference, especially in these days. I wouldn't want to wade into those waters. But it stands for passion, ownership, teamwork, impact, and skills. Those are our 5 values. So our culture is defined as our golden circle plus POTUS wrapped in professional shenanigans. And later, depending on where this goes, I'll explain the professional shenanigans piece a little bit more and how we arrived at that. But that's what our culture is. And I guess how I defined it was sort of by accident, if I'm honest. Like a lot of I don't plan always very well for the things I fall into. And so an author that I like a lot, like Simon Sinek, is Guy Kawasaki. He wrote a book called Art of the Start. And one of the things he talks about in there is wait to define your brand until you have paying customers. And so I really took that to heart and hadn't really spent a lot of time defining our brand. In 2011 is when we defined our culture. And back then, nobody was really talking about culture. People talked about brand and vision and mission and values, but culture really wasn't talked about all that much. Well, around 2011, our business had done pretty well. We had penetrated the e-commerce market pretty well and had grown the business. We had a lot of happy employees on Titans. And so I did take a step back then to think about, okay, well, what is our brand? And then in the summer, well, it was June 15th, 2011, I met Simon Sinek in person in a small group setting about half the size of this. And so we talked. Our golden circle, I defined it that day because our why, business first, online second, I'd already trademarked it. We already talked about partnerships, not transactions. Our what was different back then. So our golden circle was defined at that point and the only thing that's changed has been our what, which is part of this whole theory that your what can change. Later that summer, so there's that saying, everything you need to know you learned in kindergarten or whatever. It's kind of like everything I needed to know on this happened in 2011. Because later that summer, Netflix, this manifesto, this internal manifesto from Netflix got leaked that talked about their culture and how they were defining it. And so that's when I identified our 5 values, which at that point, you couldn't really pronounce an acronym. It was passion, ownership, teamwork, work ethic, and skills. And then 2 years later, I realized work ethic wasn't right. I wanted it to be impact. That was more reflective of what was really driving us. And so I changed it. And then to your point about like what I bring up and what my Titans do, one of the Titans came in and said, hey, Lynch, now we can have an acronym. We have POTUS. And so that's been our culture since then. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, culture is everything. Trump strategy. All right. Well, that is our time together with the panel. Now we're going to break out into our discussions at the table.
2 questions.
Oh, more questions?
So questions from let's do questions from you guys. So we got, let's call it 10 minutes 15 minutes to ask questions to the panelists before we get into small discussion. I shook down some of you in advance and said if you come to questions. Kelly, I said that, but you don't have to have one right now. Does anybody have any questions for what they said? Or awesome, rock on.
Didn't even ask me.
Love it.
I'm just gonna ask.
That's what I want.
So I work for a large insurance company, United Healthcare. You've heard of us probably. I've only been there 4 years. Culture is huge. I came from another entity that had culture focus. This one I'm learning it. We always say United, if it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done. I take more surveys and feedback just from leadership, management, coworkers, process. We see all of the data and the results. I think people are nervous to remain autonomous and respond to fix things. How often do you see or do you hear of surveys being done in groups, and what do you do with that? We measure Net Promoter Score. Would you refer it to a friend? I'm always curious to see if other people know what their Net Promoter Scores are and kind of that intel. So kind of two-part if take it if you can.
I'll jump into this first because I think one of the best things we did was rolled out a tool called Office Vibe. And Aaron's heard me talk about this for years. Heide and I are in the same C9 group. I probably talked about it with you over drinks. But Office Vibe is an employee engagement tool that has, I think, like 1,000 questions as part of its database that is populated through industrial HR engineers. And it sends a survey to our Titans every week, and each Titan gets a different survey. It's 5 questions, super easy to answer, like drag and drop the scale, click the number, you can identify yourself or not, and it measures your engagement score. It has categories based on things like culture, compensation, benefits, leadership, communication. I think there's 8 categories. And then the real key is that you set it up and administer it based on your org design. So I can see everyone's feedback. I only know who they are if they identify themselves or they say something like, oh, that's PR because he's talking about motorcycle racing. But using PR as an example, he's on Natalie's team. She can see any feedback that he provides, but Anna, who runs other teams, can't see that feedback. And so you can really see how things work within teams too. And I'll stop there because I want to hear everybody else's answer. But if there's one thing that we've done really well, very tangibly from a measurement perspective, it was roll out Office Vibe.
And does everyone participate?
Yep, yeah, and I get a report every, I think, week over who is starting to get stale. That's their term, like who hasn't responded in a while, and it's really low. And every once in a while I'll ping somebody and say, hey, make sure to be paying attention, because it's actually one of our company metrics. Our quarterly metrics are Net Promoter Score, Office Vibe engagement, and our revenue to target index.
Yeah, I would just comment that the fact that you do that, and I'm sitting there working for your company, I mean, that's just a really positive thing. And that I know that I'm just as important as our customers are to this company. I mean, I would just encourage just small businesses maybe that where, a tool like that might not be as practical. Maybe it's just a walkabout with the owner and letting people know, or some kind of a metric, a KPI that you could put in place. It's really good.
I mean, I just think about small businesses too, and if you don't want to, if you can't make these investments at this point, how hard is it to just look some employees in the eye and have just a really honest conversation? Like, at the end of the day, so many times what I hear from candidates is that I just don't feel valued. I just don't feel heard. So if you can just take the time and connect with them one-on-one, how far that will really go. Even if it's a Zoom, for you, and if they go, yeah, I'm okay. Dig deeper. Dig deeper.
Yeah, we do that.
We're humans.
Yeah. Yeah, we think about our customers. We want to have all of these feelers into our customers. And it's the same way with our employees. We need to be connected with our employees. It's very important.
In the same way employees need to be heard, if you do roll out a climate survey and you're collecting data points, the worst thing you can do for your culture is then to not communicate those results or do anything about it to your employees. Because then they're like, why did I spend all this time sharing all this feedback? Yeah. And now you're not doing anything with it. One thing that I don't know if you still do this, but I remember visiting your offices and you had jars with balls.
the marbles.
And I was like, what is going on? What's this? And you're like, when you leave the office, you get to drop in the color of how you rated your day. Is that still a thing you
Yep.
guys do? And I thought that was like such a
Oh,
cool
that's
real-time feedback. Like, was it red,
Very anonymous,
green,
too.
red,
Yep,
yellow?
red, yellow, green.
Yeah, and it was like, then you know immediately, and it's totally anonymous. Like, if you have a bunch of red balls, like,
Right. Yeah, it's a real
We
thing.
discussed.
Like, we had a rough year in 16, and we had a lot more red marbles.
Yeah.
Because we count them at the end of every year. It's part of our holiday party. I talked about our marble count, just the raw count, right? Because as we're growing, that's sort of a sign of growth, just if there's more marbles because more people, and then what the makeup is of the colors. So it's a real thing.
I love that.
Another question?
Oh, Kelly, thank you.
So as we talk about salary bands and people being double paid, whatever, I run an IT consulting company. So anything I pay my employees, I pay them fairly as per market rate. Where are you getting market rate? Because it's all over the board. And the more I pay my people, the more I have to charge my customers, which isn't going to go very well. So what are you using to compute those salary bands? Where are you getting the data?
I get the data directly from the people I'm working with. They share with me what they're making. I mean, so it's just real-time data from the market.
Right, but that's what they're making now. But if someone's going to offer them double, are they going to overpay for that talent that's worth this in the market, the
Yeah.
regular market, and not to the people who are just trying to bring them there for whatever reason?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the candidates that I have for final rounds, they have like 3 or 4 offers to choose from, and they share with me what those offers are, so I know that there's a really large.
How do you socialize that around, though? That's the biggest thing is it Glassdoor? Is it Career Builder? You know, where can we get the fair pay of the market and what those skill sets are worth so that we are paying it? Because I have raised my employees' salaries to the ones that have coming in, but some of them are ridiculously high that I just don't agree with. But is that what the market is paying now? So
You like to think it's eventually going to correct. I mean, we have salary guides. There, a lot of the national firms also have have salary guides. But yeah, I mean, it's so hard because anyone can chime in here. I'm definitely not a compensation expert. I just know what the anecdotes. Oh, I think Jenny has
There's
something.
companies and consultants that do it. There's a company called PayScale that actually goes out and gets that live data. I've also dealt with, I don't know what HR provider you're in, but ADP has some resources because they see salary data across the United States that you can help with. So just doing some of those searches on Google, you'll be able to find something. It's kind of costly if you're doing it for an entire company, but if it's a few positions, you can sometimes get a deal on that as well. Okay.
Yeah, I would say I work in an HR company, and our compensation analysis team is the busiest they've ever been because everyone wants those data points. And we have to break it down by zip code. It's really finite because everyone's going remote, right? And trying to take advantage of, having a job in Minneapolis and living in. I talked to who lives in Corcoran, like far away, right? Like just different because Corcoran's not that far. But I will just share also thinking about leveling up your current workforce and salaries. I was having breakfast with a girlfriend earlier this week, and she was sharing her husband works at a large bank, and he's a hiring manager. And the offer letter came across his desk for someone that he wanted to hire that was 3 years out of college, and her salary was 90% of his salary, and he'd been there for 20 years. And he's like, what? Right? But so hiring man, your mid-level staff, they know what's going on with the new hires. So don't forget, because now all his radars are up, and he's like, well, I'm grossly underpaid. I've given you 20 years, and you're giving someone with 4 years experience basically my salary. So my heart goes out to business owners because it's really, really tricky, and it's not sustainable to continuously just keep paying people more and more money because the economy is going to right size, I want to believe. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, right?
So not only is there this, we have to look at raising our prices, but I think as business owners, we also have to look strategically at what's changing in our businesses and look at our models. We've made some drastic changes to how we're going to market and what we're delivering and what we're not, and made some serious changes, and we'll continue to do that. So more than ever, looking at our strategies and how we actually run our businesses and what we're doing, we have to continue to examine those things and pivot quickly. More than ever. leadership in those areas is going to be so key. Because we can't, like, we've raised our prices, all of us have, I would imagine, but that's not enough anymore. It's not going to keep up.
On the topic of the sources for this pay data, one of the things very tangibly that helped us was a few months ago, we promoted one of our developers to software manager, so she's running half the team. And she was, I think, inclined to want to, this is her first time managing, right? So I think she was inclined to want to meet a lot of what she was hearing as unofficial chatter before she was in management for what people should be paid. And we've had very little turnover, so we haven't had a lot of toxic conversations around that, but I think she was kind of inclined toward that. And so when she started to talk about the raises she wanted to make, a lot of them were just more than was reasonable, and we've already raised pay bands. So my point is, we were transparent in sharing with her the sources we use for establishing our pay bands, which some of it comes from pay scale, right? I think you mentioned that's one of the places, we don't pay for that, but one of my sources gives me some of that stuff. And so we shared that raw data with her, and then that sort of remove the air of mystery as to, oh, well, how much are you keeping and telling us that we're worth, this is what we're hearing in the market. So that immediately shifted her perspective, and she understood and used that then for how she's been managing comp since then.
Also, total compensation statements, if you're not doing that for your employees at the end of year, make sure they're seeing their total comp statement, because what you're paying for their benefits, what you're paying for their 401k contribution, what you're paying for all these other things that you're doing, you just up their salary 20, 30%, right? So really think about that. Your payroll provider should be able to produce that for you, or your accountant.
Great point.
That is, yeah.
Very good point.
Absolutely. All right. We are going to move on to our table discussions. Erin's going to hand out some cards that have some starter questions for you. So we're going to spend about a half an hour, and then we're going to come back and have some aha moments every table can share. So conversate away.
What was pretty cool was having your employees, each of your employees be on a committee. So different types of items that you have in your business that are important, depending on the size of your business, kind of determines the amount of committees, but one of the committees being an employee experience. So that was a really, like Darin said, having a voice and having autonomy, but really feeling like, you're valued. Having an employee experience committee where other people in the company can go and tell those committee members different things, was a really nice way to make sure everybody's feeling like they have some input.
Nice.
It helps with that ownership mentality.
Yeah.
For everyone in the company.
Yeah, great. All right, how about here?
We talked a lot about the culture between the office and the floor. We have a couple of different scenarios where we have people that are all in manufacturing facilities that look at the office as a different setting, and the office people are kind of looking at the floor as a different setting. So kind of bring that culture together so that everybody's on the same team and promoting what leadership wants. So we also talked about leadership giving a vision and having that open to the people that maybe don't hear it every day in the office.
Okay, different ways to do that?
Yeah.
To communicate that vision consistently. What do they say? You have to hear something 7 or 8 times to really register it, or until they make fun of you, I've heard. You should say until they make fun of you. That's a saying in our office. That's a good way to say it. All right, how about here? What do you guys come up with?
Yeah. So, are you just asking the first question, or just our overall theme?
Yeah, just what kind of takeaways did you have?
We talked about so first thing we talked about was, remote workforce, just the challenges of creating a culture of engagement amongst people in a remote environment, especially a lot of white-collar type jobs where, you have people that haven't seen each other in 2 years. Specific to my company, it's just hard to create that culture and build that bond between people who need to have a successful organization. Jenny, she works in healthcare, so they have been in the office. Something she mentioned is they work in a business with small margins, so haven't been able to raise prices because of the income type of government billing. And so they're selling the mission and vision of the organization and trying to get creative and find strategies to engage people that way.
All right, how about here? Oh, we already went there. Over here. Susan.
Thanks, Heidi. We also talked about a bunch of things. I will maybe highlight talking about sabbatical, and personally, when it came up, I thought, what, 12 weeks of sabbatical? Like, that's ridiculous. And then I sort of checked myself and thought, well, I don't know, it probably happens in Europe, right? Given part of what we do, and I think all of us are really kind of digging deep into how are we going to solve this? How are we going to get creative? Because it's just not how it was in the past. So whether it's refreshing job descriptions or really highlighting referrals, but in terms of encouraging people to take the vacations that they're given, and then maybe having a new, whether it's a sabbatical, to really value the people that we already have, with, again, just the fresh ideas.
People really value PTO. That's one of the things that is definitely bubbled up. Is
if they take it.
Yeah, if they take it.
Well, okay, so with the ability to take it,
yes.
Right, or the insistence.
Yeah.
It's so valuable. How could I leave you?
All right, how about the back corner here?
I don't think we really followed the directions, but we did.
All right, this is my favorite table.
But like, we didn't really have marching orders of who was going to talk. We talked a lot though, and it was about being creative, and it wasn't just in terms of like your pay scale, but being creative about benefits, because we talked about pet insurance. Yes, I have a dog, that sounds great. That may not be important to someone else, but just offering them, knowing that different individuals will take advantage of them, so the actual financial impact may not be as great as what you think it will, so don't be too afraid of thinking outside the box, but asking for feedback from your current employees and potential employees as well when you're going through the interview process. But one thing I wanted to share this with you, was having objectives. So when you're talking about pay, not being afraid of saying, okay, well, you're asking for double the pay. Well, I also want you to have skin in the game. So having MBOs that are set out there with things that actually raise the bar of the business itself, but it also is achievable by the individual. So it's, if you think you're worth this, then kind of show me. And here's the path to get there, and laying that out in the offer, the job offer. So it's including them in your business. It's letting them really walk the talk. And the red flag would be if they say, well, that's just not for me, then that's probably not the right person for your organization.
Good points. Nice. Go back here.
We suck at directions too. Chris took the most notes. So
I took a lot of notes, yes. I learned a lot about Coalition9. I think we really focused on, in this tight labor market, with the teams that we have right now and the new individuals that we're bringing into our company, how we really have to shift our mindset, and Luke talked about it, on really focusing on mastery of technical skills. That's why I'm going to hire somebody. And the inverse of that is taking a look at attitude and aptitude. And if I can coach somebody to do it, that's maybe going to be a better employee long term than just somebody who knows how to take and tie something.
So not focus on mastery.
Yeah, don't focus on mastery.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick here.
I think we started with our war stories, right? It's kind of what we all been dealing with, and we did really kind of lean on each other for creativity. The one thing I took away, similar to something we do, is I like the thought of doing a video for potential applicants. We do one for our employees monthly to share things. We call it video blurb, and that resonates really well, keeping people in it. And I just, with that technology and everything, I think there's a huge play there to help sell yourself, because we're in the spot where we're selling them now.
Well, we incorporated videos this past year, and it made a huge difference. Thank you, Laura King. We hired 32 people last year, and I know the videos made a huge difference. So, absolutely. How about here? This was a great table. We did follow directions.
We did.
Not my normal.
Yeah. So, well, actually, a couple things. The retention bonus was a big part of our conversation of just saying, hey, if we have, especially in Fred's business, where there's some turnover on the lower side, looking at kind of that middle level and offering some retention bonuses there. I think that's something we kind of hashed out a little bit. And then also just being able to not focus so much on the day-to-day, because in my personal industry, we focus so much on the day-to-day, the transactional stuff, and not realizing that we're talking to talent. We're talking to people in our industry, really cool people all the time, we're just not looking at it like, oh, I'm actually could be talking to somebody that I should ask out to lunch. But we're doing a transactional thing, and we're focused on that. And that's silly, because how much growth opportunity is there if you just ask a question, hey, let's go have a beer, like, let's just talk about stuff. You seem cool, we're cool. Well, no, that's what it is. And how many missed opportunities do we all experience? Because when we're talking to competitors or whatever, we're missing those opportunities by not meeting with people like that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of our conversation stemmed around retention and this concept of re-recruiting your existing team members. As Heide has mentioned, at All-in-One County, we spent a lot of last year working on the talent acquisition piece, and I feel like our key focus here in the near term is really going to be on retention and getting folks to really open up and connect with them. And keep asking until they tell us what's going on, what's on their heart, and how their engagement
And
is.
retention bonuses. That's what we're doing. I was going to come talk to you about that next, so.
Right there.
All right. Did I miss anybody, or anyone have anything else to add? All right. Well, thank you, panelists, and thank you, Erin. What a great event, and I hope that you all had fun and learned something and can take something to businesses and make a difference. So thank you very much for coming.